Hello, and welcome back to the podcast where you are invited for lighthearted conversations about things that matter as you seek to live your most meaningful, beautiful, and joyful life. I'm your host, Dr. Edie Wadsworth, and I hope you enjoy your stay here at the House of Joy. Welcome, everybody, to House of Joy.
Welcome back. Woo!
We're so
back.
Glad you're here.
We're on
back.
the couch and we're back.
We're on the couch. We're back. We are fully embracing our rest area this January. This podcast is all about why you should learn how to knit and other ways to embrace your rest area. Rest era. Okay, can we start over? No. Should we keep going? Okay.
She means rest era.
Rest era.
But, you know, one and the same, your area of rest. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, you guys. I'm a January baby. And January, I know this is not a popular opinion. January is my favorite month.
Well, it's because it's your birthday.
I know it's because it's my birthday. But also, Emmy,
You love your birthday more than anybody else loves their birthday.
I love my birthday. That could be a whole nother episode of how you should take responsibility for your birthday to make it epic. It's nobody's responsibility to make you have a good birthday except for you. Right? Totally. So I think the reason I love January so much and why I think you should make January epic for yourself is because it can be a really good time of reflection. I love going inward because I feel like so much of my life is like, especially we live on the lake. We live in a place where you can be outside doing things, you know, a lot of the time. I love when it's cold enough and just wintry enough that it kind of forces us inward. And I want to talk about that because I have not been a person who has prioritized rest.
Well, I wanted to bring up, I think there's two ways to look at this. And I think we're both kind of on separate ends of the spectrum here.
Tell me.
Because I feel like there's the overachiever.
Yes.
That's I would say, you know.
Well, me.
Where you don't feel like you can rest until you have literally done everything there is to do.
Yeah.
I lean more on the side of I kind of get so stuck in all of the things that there are to do.
Yeah.
That then the only thing I feel like I can do is not do anything at all.
Yes.
I can tend to get super overwhelmed by tasks and you know, if I get too in my head about it. So, I think there's, toxic rest.
Yes.
And, toxic overachieving.
Yes,
there's
and
two sides.
Well, I mean, I am the poster child probably for toxic overachieving, and it's something that I've been working on my whole life. I think this is what I want to bring up, too, because I think for me, it stems from having issues in my childhood, mostly with my dad, where I didn't feel enough or loved enough. And so I took on the role of, if I achieve enough, if I do enough, then that means I'll be worthy. That means I'll be loved, that kind of thing. So it doesn't come from a good place.
Well, and I think mine kind of comes from the opposite place where growing up, I knew that no matter what I got done or what I achieved, I would still be loved. Cared
valued.
For.
Yes.
So I think people really do tend to fall on one side or the other of what they naturally skew towards.
And this is something because, just because of the stress factor, I've done a lot of research as a family doctor. I mean, now I don't practice medicine, but I love to deep dive into research. And I've done a lot of research into the effect of stress on our bodies. It's one of my favorite things to study. It's and because I know so much about it, I realize that this way that I've lived my whole life, which is just all the time, do all the things, stress my body completely out.
Is that what is your cortisol levels?
Yes. Yes.
I'm in my health era. I know that word.
I'm glad you know that word.
Mm-hmm.
So I have done a lot of study about cortisol. I've actually had 2 separate times where my adrenal glands crashed because I just get into go mode, mode.
What is adrenal glands?
Your adrenal glands are what make cortisol.
Okay.
So when you ask your body to continually be stressed,
all the
it
time.
will.
You're always
It'll
in a
keep
state.
pumping out cortisol, and then your body will go, look, I can't make any more stress hormone. And so it just will stop doing it. And then you go through this period where you're really fatigued and it's hard for you to function and you don't feel like yourself. And I've been through that 2 different times in my life. The last time was earlier this year. And I think it was because we had traveled a lot. We were just doing it. We had a really busy year. And when I went to get I knew something was kind of off. And when I went to get my lab work done, she's like, man, your adrenal glands are suffering. You're going to have to slow down, cut back, really reduce your stress. She put me on a lot of supplements. And of course, what do? I'm like, okay, while I'm in my rest era, I think I'll learn how to wake surf. So which is fun.
Not quite rest.
Not quite exactly rest. And I ended up getting a crazy sinus infection. But all of that to say, this is something that I really struggle with. And even though I'm really cognizant of it, like I know that it's my tendency to overdo, it's really hard to break those bad habits. So this is something that I prioritize. This is something that I read books about. And I wanted to do a podcast episode on it because I know that people tend to struggle, like you said, with either one or the other.
Yeah, like what I was just about to say is I feel like that is never my problem. Yeah. Is like feeling... I guess it all stems from a pressure of stems from a feeling of needing to do stuff. But like mine more comes out through feeling stuck. That leads to
guilt.
And
I think you tend to have perfectionist tendencies, so then you really don't want to do anything unless it can be perfect.
And it's not perfectionist in the way of like my space needs to be neat. I think that has come out more as I've gotten older. Yeah. But it is like perfectionist of what I'm actually doing. Like I don't feel like I can actually do anything unless it's going to be perfect, which is a big problem I've been having, and I think I'm overcoming a lot. Yeah. Because now that I work for you, you're like the opposite. You just jump into things before they're figured out, like this podcast. Like, I was in the headspace of like, we're not going to launch this.
We'll launch it in March. And I'm like,
for like 4 months.
Coming out January 4th.
I was like, okay, sure. We'll just figure it out.
But I think one of the reasons that this topic is really important to me as I've studied this is that we are made to work. Mm-hmm. Our bodies literally cry out to be useful. And if you think of when you felt like so satisfied, it was probably after you did some big project that felt hard, or you did a run, or like our bodies really do cry out to be useful. And so what I've studied in the last few years is that, yes, we were made to work. Mm-hmm. Like our bodies are made to work. And we feel better when we're working hard. But when you're doing that from a place of rest, and if you think about it scripturally, really what that means is you're doing it not because you're trying to prove yourself, not because you're trying to earn love or be more worthy, but you're already all those things. And from that place of true rest in your identity in Christ, that he loves you, you're valued. From that place, you're free to now go work hard and do your best and give your best effort. So even though I say like prioritize rest, it doesn't mean an absence of working.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. I feel like people think of rest, and I was kind of thinking of it like, you think of rest, you kind of think your first thought is like laying
around.
But I think there's a difference between rest and relaxing. I think relaxing that can be, because it's good to actually let your body rest. Yes. But what's your definition? Like, what would you say is rest in a sense of like you're working from a place of rest?
Yeah. So they talk about this in the scriptures that in the Jewish week, the week begins with Shabbat or Sunday. The week begins with rest. And what that really means is that is like communion with God. That's rest in how he made you and who he made you to be, that he loves you from this place of real security, real contentment. Mm-hmm. And when you begin your week like that, the rest of your week lines out great because you're starting from this place of like rest in him.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like when I graduated, I felt, and it's not in my personality to like feel super, like I said, like have to do all these things. It's not always been me to feel that way, but when I graduated college in May, I started feeling so much pressure.
Yes.
Just
I need to get a job.
I need to get a job. I need to do these things. And so from that place of pressure from other people, and pressure from myself, and not because I actually felt like that was my passion and that was what I wanted to do, I got a job literally right out of, I don't even think I was graduated yet.
Listen, not only that, you had to ask off that job for your actual graduation.
No, like I literally had to ask them if I could go to graduation because I was already starting work.
You're going to be working the rest of your life. Why did you take a job that you start the week you're graduating from college?
Yeah, the job was great. And I'm thankful for my time at the job.
Yes.
But what I think I'm trying to say is like, because I got that job out of a place of not rest, it was out of a place of like striving, fear, pressure. It seriously tore me apart. Like I feel like the better part of last year, I lost so much of my actual personality. And it's not anyone's fault at work. It's not the actual work. Yeah. It's, I think, looking back and reflecting, it was because I was doing that job out of a place of striving, pleasing.
Yes.
And I didn't even realize that until I got out of it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. I feel so much more free. I feel so much more myself. Yeah. Because I only took that job out of a place of not rest. Like that's what I could think of as like the opposite feeling.
Yes.
Of working from a place.
It is. It's like the opposite of striving.
Yes.
It's the opposite of stress and pressure. And, you know, I have over the last year, I know I talked about this in an earlier episode, but over the last year, I have been, I hired a coach and she calls herself the Joy Coach. And she talks about how to live your life, how to build your business from a place of joy, rest, presence, instead of from a place of stress, pressure, striving.
It's so interesting, too, that we're doing this podcast because truly, I think when I quit my job, the reason that I felt like I had to was because I felt like all my joy
was gone.
I felt like I couldn't actually enjoy anything I was doing because I was so in a place that I didn't want to be. And like I said, it was not the job or the people. Like I think the people there, it's where I personally was, and the reason I was the place I was working from. Yeah. And so when I like looked into 2024, like I wanted the joy to come back, and I think it has to do so much of like what you're pouring out, like what you're coming from. And I think when you talk about rest, I had never really thought about rest until I took your coaching program as like working from a place of rest and living from a place of rest. I had only thought of rest as like actual like and doing things that are restful.
Yeah. And I think like when I think about it from a physical standpoint too, like several years ago I started doing CrossFit and the workouts there are tough, right? Even today, I went to a workout today. It was a tough workout. So the reason it feels so good to recover and to rest is because I worked so hard today, right? The other thing that I think is so powerful is part of the rest and recovery from that is walking. It's not like laying on the couch. I mean, it could be part of it, but I'm saying that part of
most of your recovery.
Yeah, part of really good recovery is walking around and getting the soreness out. And, you know, that's part of the rest and recovery. So when I think about it like that, I'm like, the reason it feels so good to finally sit down is because you have been working hard.
You put in the work to be able to.
Yeah. And so when I talk about it, I don't mean the absence of work. I mean working from a different place. And truly, it is a state of mind that you are so secure in who you are and who God made you to be and how much He values you and cherishes you and loves you. You don't have to prove anything to Him. You don't have to strive. Like the striving is over. It's just this sort of like deep sort of exhale. Like, oh, I don't have to live from that striving and pressure anymore.
That's kind of what I felt when I quit was like, and I'm not saying everyone has to quit their job to feel like that, but I think like just I was doing the job only to prove that I could do the job. Do it.
Yeah.
You know, not because I was passionate about the work that I was doing.
Right.
And the second I quit, like the second I pursued something that, you know, I actually felt like I wanted to pour into, it's like you want to put in the work.
Yeah. And the other thing that I love about it for this time of year, which is kind of why we chose it for this time of year, when I started learning about female hormones and following the cycle.
We need to have a whole episode on that.
We'll have a whole episode on that.
Seriously?
We're not going to dive deep into that right now. When I started studying that, and I designed my whole program in these 90-day cycles of sort of the seasons.
Yeah.
If you think about winter, what is happening in winter in nature? Everything is kind of resting. It's like going dormant. It's, you know, it's cold outside. The seeds are, now there's a lot happening under the ground.
That you don't see.
Those seeds, like I know every year when our little daffodils come up in February, I'm like, those beautiful little yellow flowers have been under there working like crazy all through January. So it's not an absence of work, but often if you look at what's happening in nature, it's like the deeper work that we can't see, which is why I kind of think about January for me is such a time of reflection. I love journaling. Our next episode is all about journaling, like spending some time really asking yourself the deeper questions of your life from a place of sufficiency, that you know you're enough. And if you know you're enough and you know you're loved and you know you're valued, everything is just your playground.
Yeah.
You get to create your life from a place of love, joy, presence.
It goes into kind of what we talked about last time, which was like those goals, and we feel this pressure. And I think part of that pressure stems from like actually doing things like working out and eating healthier.
Yeah.
But like also, I've never thought of a goal to be to pour in more to like your deeper self.
Yeah.
And to, you know, get onto that aspect more.
Yeah.
And I like your like analogy with winter.
Yes.
I've never thought about the time of year. Honestly, I just think of like, I'm cold.
I'm cold. I wish it was warm.
I'm cold. I want to sit by a fire.
It's funny because Dad is always saying, like, we should go to Florida for January. And I'm like, heck no. Like, I only get this 1 month out of the year, maybe a little into February.
To have an excuse.
To have an excuse to just nestle in and start the fireplace and have my knitting.
But I think that can be such a good lesson for, I mean, it's not something I necessarily understand, but I think anyone can understand not feeling like they're doing enough.
Yes.
And like feeling like sitting and knitting is like a waste of time, for example. Like I think I struggle with that. It feels like I should be doing something productive.
Yeah.
But like sometimes that is the best thing for your brain.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. And, you know, we're going to talk about, I think you have some really good practical ways that we can do this and incorporate it into our lives. But I think, especially for somebody who does strive a lot, what I have realized is that in order to sort of turn my brain off, but give my hands still something to do after a hard day of work. And by hard day, I have an amazing dream job. So what I mean by hard is it's creativity. My brain is working. You know, I'm writing emails. I'm coaching people. And after doing that, I kind of crave going inward. Maybe I have my knitting. Maybe I do some journaling or whatever. I kind of crave that. And I love being able to, especially, you know, in a month like January or February, I love having the excuse of, well, it's really cold outside and it's still dark outside. And
part of me wishes I would have incorporated some things like that I know really like just are good for my soul, like knitting or any kind of like crocheting, just things that you feel are, I think it's easy to feel like it's not valuable to put your time into stuff like that.
Here's one thing I wanted to bring up, Em, and I know for your generation, this is really, I mean, for all of our generations, I think it's powerful. So you've got really hard, productive, deep work on the one hand. You've got true, restorative, soul-nourishing rest on the other hand. Yeah. And you know where most people live is like weirdly in the middle. They're kind of working when they're working, but they're sort of distracted. social media has made it almost impossible for us to do really deep, satisfying work. Focused work.
Yes.
Yes. And even for me, like, I have to really watch myself and guard my time and be careful that I'm not living in a weird middle. Like, I'm not really truly working and getting the satisfaction of a hard day's work and work that I'm really proud of. And I'm not really resting. I'm not.
Yeah, so your body is kind of always confused.
It's confused, and it's in the middle. And I honestly think that's part of the reason why there's so much anxiety. And there's just so much, we're made for both of those. We're made for that deep, honest, good day's work. We're also made for true rest.
Well, and then that allows you, if you know in your heart that you gave your work your 100%.
Yeah.
Then you feel like you deserve.
Yeah, you're like, yes, I can't wait to.
That is so true, because I think part of the reason I didn't feel like I ever deserved, like, that pressure that comes from like a corporate or a more corporate job.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I've got to work so hard, but I never actually did put my 100% into it. So then even when I go home, I still felt like I didn't deserve to rest. But it's because I knew in my heart.
And we've all had lots of days like that,
yeah.
right? Whereas I can remember when I was writing my book, I have a memoir called All the Pretty Things. When I was writing my book, so many consistent days of deep work.
Yeah.
When I was creating the certification program, the coach certification program, like 4 months of just really deep work, head down, doing something that I was so proud of, but that was so hard to stay focused. And I long for that. And
that's something I wish, and I think, like, especially just looking inward at myself, like, and I do think it's the access that we have to so many distractions. Like,
yep.
It is so hard to sit down, like, and just pour into work. At least for me, like, I know some of my friends too, like, it's just a struggle when that's an option.
Yes.
And
because what happens is when you're, like, for me, if I'm working on an email or I'm trying to write a new class, as soon as I get the least bit stuck, I'm like, oh, let me open social.
That is literally me. Social. That's literally me.
Yeah. And, I love trying to create pockets of time in my day where it's just like.
So how do you balance that? Working. Like, what would you, I'm just asking honestly for me, like, how do you think?
We've talked a little bit about, like, one of the things that I do is, like, say in the mornings, I usually have an hour or so in the mornings before I take Tom to school. And I will say to myself, not that I'm going to work on an email, but I'm going to finish an email in this hour, or I'm going to write a class in this hour. And so I give myself, like, very specific parameters.
Yeah.
And then, so I have that hour to do it. And I think even just little things like that help. But that's why I think it's really helpful to really set some intention about what you want your life to be about. I don't want to get to end in my life and go, yeah, I scrolled a lot.
Yeah, and that's what I feel like you get so trapped. And that's the hard thing about it. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying, that cycle of, like, guilt, and now you can't get out of it.
Yep.
And now you're just going to sit longer, and now you're just going to scroll longer, and it's just a perpetual cycle because you feel so much shame that you can't stop scrolling, that you keep scrolling, or whatever it is. Like, that is so true, and that is something I really do want to work on.
Yeah.
How can we tie that into rest? Like, how does the rest part of it?
Because we think we're doing that, whatever we choose, the scrolling, the overeating, the online shopping, like, we think we're choosing that because we get this temporary relief, and we do, like, we get a dopamine hit from that. We feel temporarily better, but because our soul knows that's not great, then it sort of heaps on, like you're saying, that guilt and shame. Whereas, like, I never feel guilty when I sit down and journal for an hour.
Yeah,
I never feel guilty when I sit down at night and knit for an hour. I don't have that same, like, oh, I shouldn't have spent. I mean, you could make any of that an idol. You could turn any of that into a distraction. But your body knows, like, you will feel the guilt of it when you're doing it as a distraction versus when you're doing it for rest. That's how you know the difference. How does it feel in your body? So like when you go for a hike, how do you feel after that?
Yeah, you feel so amazing. Good. You feel like, oh my gosh.
You go for a 20-minute walk outside. You're like, oh, that felt great. You don't get to the end of that and go, oh, I got to stop doing that.
Yeah. Every time I get done like scrolling for 30 minutes, like I get so stuck in it, I do feel so much shame. I'm like, oh my gosh, I literally could have done so much stuff in that time that I just took.
Yeah.
You know, and we've been talking about doing 12,000 steps a day.
Yes.
And like for some reason that feels like such an unachievable thing to do. But if I would just put like
so doable,
the time that I do just like wasting waddling around watching my phone.
Yeah. But the other thing, kind of similar though to what we talked about when we were talking about resolutions, is that you just say to yourself, I'm getting there. Like, I'm doing it. Instead of saying to like beating yourself up.
Yeah.
Because that is not going to produce change in yourself. And so I like to practice how I talk to myself about it so that I don't get stuck in, like,
and I think you can get better about it to, like, bring it back to the rest, like, by choosing intentionally those things that you do
that are rest
that will get you to be more positive self-talk, have better thoughts about yourself because you are practicing what you preach.
Yeah. And so choosing those activities intentionally, which brings us to,
oh my gosh, a perfect segue into, I just kind of wrote down these that I know you use some of them, and I know I've kind of tried to incorporate them more, and I know for sure that, like, you know, conversations like these definitely are motivating to integrate them more into my life.
Yeah, me too.
But I have like a list of 5 things that I think are really achievable to incorporate actual mindful rest into your days. So the first one I said, and this one's a shout out to you, is an Epsom salt bath, because I know that you love your Epsom salt bath.
I love an Epsom salt bath.
Like, do you talk about anything more than that? I don't think so. But I took one the other night and I was like,
Mom is onto something.
This is kind of nice. And I read some sort of like scientific thing that it, like, I mean, I can't really remember.
Good for you for so many reasons, but the magnesium in the Epsom salts is really good for you. Helps you relax. So at the end of the day, it's great. I also use a lot of essential oils. And the hot water from the hot bath drives the oils in. So I use a lot of my hormone oils when I'm doing that. And I'll link in the show notes to the ones that I use specifically. But
I need to know too.
Love a good hot bath. And it feels like such a good way to take care of myself at the end of the day. Again, nothing feels better than that when you've worked hard, you've worked out, you've gone for walks, you've made dinner. Like, it feels like, oh, this is the perfect way to end the day.
And you kind of have time. Yeah. If you want to take that time to, like, you know, sit with yourself and think and reflect.
Yep.
Another thing I have on the list is prayer/meditation.
Yep. Love it.
Which would be, you can combine these things.
Yes.
And, you know, I'm like kind of talking to myself here as well, because I definitely do not do these things as much as I should, but I know in my heart that they would make it better.
Yes.
But you use, I think it's one of your 3 favorite things, but I know you use I
use an app called Brain Tap, and I listen to some of their.
This stuff is hilarious, by the way. Like, I know that it works, but one time me and Mom were in the hotel room together, and she's like, I'm just gonna put on my meditation, and it's like really intense. Like, it's like got things going at the same time. It was just funny. You would listen to that while you sleep.
Like, but I love scripture. I have a book, one of my favorite books on this, and I will link it in the show notes, because right now it is escaping me. I can see the cover of it.
Yeah, that's the worst.
But I'll link it for you. But it talks about how we are, because people will say, like, oh, meditation is not great for Christians. We're always meditating.
In prayer, right?
Well, yeah. And we're always just meditating. When you get lost in thought, that is you meditating. The question is, what are you meditating on?
You kind of want to, like,
so I want to control what's coming in.
Oh,
so
I love that.
Meditating on scripture, meditating on these guided
I never
meditations.
thought about that. You're really lost when you're lost in thought.
When you're lost in thought, you're meditating. Often we're meditating on things that we wouldn't want to be. So to be more intentional about what am I getting lost in thought in, right? And so I love it. And I can link to the one that I listen to a lot on Brain Tap, but Brain Tap has some really good ones. It has a lot of health meditations when you're working on your health. There's a lot of meditations on there about stress, which I love because that tends to be the thing that I need to work on. So I love that. Okay, what's number 3, Em?
I said deep breathing exercises because actually this is really simple, but we came the same weekend that my friends, and she had this list of things that we were to do. Yes. And on the list was joy breathing, and we were all like, okay, sounds very voodoo, but it's really just like
it's just breaths. Taking deep breaths.
And it does really like, I mean, it's so simple. Well, you could almost die, but like, it's just deep breathing with
moving your arms
or something.
Yeah. And I read a book. You don't know the backstory of this. I read a book 2.5 years ago, I think, called Breath. One of the best is by James Nestor. One of the best books I ever read. And it made me realize how often I am like shallow breathing through my mouth. And so many health problems are associated with shallow breathing through your mouth. So I started to become really conscious of it. I downloaded like the Wim Hof app and started doing more like breathing exercises. And after I got COVID, I got diagnosed. I went to see my osteopath, and she said, you've got some symptoms of long COVID. And she did some manipulation on me and got my spine straightened out again. She did, my diaphragm was kind of locked up. And she goes, your breathing is so shallow, and I think it's from when you had COVID. So then I had already read this book, so I started just very intentionally doing deep breathing every day, like really, breathing through my belly and really working on that. And I just noticed a big difference. So it's something that I know is really important, especially when you're in a lot of stress and anxiety. You tend to do quick, shallow breathing. And most of us, if we're not paying attention, that's how we breathe all day long, instead of good deep breathing, which regulates your heart rate. So
taking time throughout the day to like intentionally
take some good deep breaths.
I feel like it really,
nothing more crazy,
there's nothing
or magical
voodoo about it.
Yeah, take some deep breaths.
It does really when you make the intentional time to like let your body take that full breath. It really does make you feel so much better. It makes you
feel better. I know.
My 4th, I think.
What's number 4?
Is knitting.
Okay, y'all, if you're watching on YouTube, Emmy forgot her knitting.
Okay, yeah, I should be ashamed of myself because all we talk about in my whole house,
all these 23-year-olds, by the way, are obsessed with knitting.
Seriously, we've created a knitting movement. I'm in a knitting club group message on iMessage. I'm not even kidding. We are changing the world, these knitters.
These knitters. So if you're watching on YouTube, this is my newest scarf.
It's gorge.
It's so pretty. But what a great way to rest your mind, work your hands.
But be careful because it's taking over.
It's addictive.
It is addictive. Really like you'll be sitting there and then that's all I want to do is sit and knit. But it does really I think calm your... It really does make you feel so much rested, more rested. Yes. And we've always talked about this. I have to be doing something with my hands constantly. Me too. And so that really helps me, whether I'm chatting with my friends, I feel like I listen better when I have something to do with my hands. And that is just the most satisfying thing to do, isn't it?
When Emmy brought her friends to the house a few weeks back, I told them all these weird things I was going to teach them. Journaling and making fudge and joy breathing, and knitting was on the list.
Knitting was on the list. It was a big hit. We are all knitting monsters, and it's my favorite thing that we do together.
Yeah, so learn to knit. January, you
or
guys,
any type of crocheting.
January, learn to knit.
Learn to knit.
Crochet, but
crocheting and any crafts.
Yeah.
But knitting, I would say, is my favorite. Right now.
So fun. Okay, number 5.
5 and the last one is long walks, and this is something that I am definitely not doing, but I want.
You want to.
I'm going to be doing.
Yes.
We've gone on me and Katie have gone on a couple walks, but I think I see such a benefit to it when you do it, but I do need to get better at it. But I think that it's such a great form of like
so fun
creating rest in your brain.
And when you put yourself like, I know some people don't like counting their steps. I personally love it because it reminds me to get more steps. The other thing that I always do is if I go to Target or Walmart, I park way out in the back.
This is true.
Don't I?
I was like, why are you acting like a middle-aged man with his truck? Like, you are parking. You know how they do? They, like, park in the farthest parking spot because they don't want anyone to hit their car. And you have to walk, like, 50,000 steps just to get into... That's how Mom is. And it's not because she cares if someone hits her car. It's literally... She's like, I gotta get my steps in. I was like, okay.
The other thing I love to do... This is so insane, you guys. Maybe I shouldn't say this on live podcast.
I'm scared.
But I will on purpose like go upstairs and get one thing. I know I could bring it all down at the same time and I just keep going up and down.
That's psycho behavior.
Get one thing, go get the next thing, go get the next thing.
As I'm walking down with like I'm like dropping things on the way down because there's no way I'm taking another trip.
Imagine, Emmy, the benefit not just of the steps, but you're going up and down literal steps 1,000 times. So just fun fact.
Psycho behavior.
Okay, but just fun fact. You want to guess how many steps I got on Thanksgiving Day?
Oh my gosh. Like, actually, I think you probably got like
15K, baby. I
was going to say 15,000.
15K.
I don't doubt that. Anytime you stay at our house, and anyone who's stayed at our house knows this, if you stay downstairs in the rooms, you will hear every footstep of Edie Wadsworth up at probably 4 a.m. It sounds like actually you're like taking chairs and just dragging them on the floor. You've got your cowboy boots on. That's what it sounds like. I know you get a lot of steps. I know, because I can hear every single one of them all my friends.
Kind of dying.
I got so used to it because like I lived here, but all my friends when they come over, they're like, "Is everything okay up there?" I mean, it literally sounds. No, like it sounds like something is going wrong, but
it does sound like
she really does. She really does get her steps in.
I know. Emmy came upstairs one stairs and she goes, "Do you have your cowboy boots on?"
It sounds like you have high heels, just like knocking on the ground.
But anyways, get your steps in, no matter if you do it in your cowboy boots at 4 a.m, which I didn't have on, by the way.
Right. Okay.
You guys, that's an episode. That's a wrap, except we got to do our 3 things.
We have our big 3.
What I'm loving right now.
Let me see. Oh my gosh. This one's really good. So my first favorite thing is Mom's new current obsession with Starbucks sandwiches. This sounds like a weird one, but let me explain. Weird. For some reason, Mom never knew that Starbucks had sandwiches or like any food. And the other week, like, I'm not kidding.
Food.
Okay, well, you never talked about it. And apparently her friend Tanner introduced
Shout out
her. Tanner Bell. Introduced her to one of these sandwiches. And I'm not kidding. Every time I'm home, she like recommends it for lunch. She recommends us go to Starbucks for this delicious sandwich. I'm like, I don't want to go to Starbucks for lunch. And she's obsessed. She brings it up all the time. You seriously talk about those Starbucks sandwiches like they just got invented. But I just love you for that, you know.
Can I make a confession? Sure. I went Christmas shopping yesterday, and first thing I did, I went straight to Starbucks. And I got a drink.
And
I got the bacon Gouda sandwich.
That's the one? She was like, it's like bacon Gouda? Like the most popular.
And my sister was with me, and I go, "Have you ever had this sandwich?" And she goes, yeah.
It's like frozen. They like stick it in the toaster for a second. It's a little freezer burnt.
Okay, hush
already. But I mean, it's good.
It's really good.
What is my second one? Oh, my second one is Athleta leggings.
Yep.
Because
also,
actually,
thanks to me.
Yeah, you turned me on. I am a legging snob a little bit, and the Athleta leggings, they're still kind of pricey, but they're not as bad as like Lululemon or something. Yep. So I've been obsessed with those.
Okay.
I've also been obsessed with the voice feature on iMessage.
Tell me.
I don't know why it never has.
Oh, like leaving just voice notes?
Just like holding it down and like.
Oh, I do it all the time.
I know. It's kind of like Voxer. I never really did that. I don't know why, but it really is a lot better. I can like really, get my emotion across.
I feel like this is a middle-age hack Because we don't like texting, so we just like talking.
If you ask any of my friends, I am the worst texter. I text like a middle-aged woman. I can't text back. I won't text you back. I've read your message. I get overwhelmed, and then I don't answer. It's so bad, actually. That's something I need to work on, but I just get overwhelmed by a text message. So the voice filter or feature, I can like
all day long
get all my thoughts out. I think that's why it overwhelms me. Is like I have so much to say.
Yeah. Okay, number 1 for me is a puffer vest. I am obsessed with a puffer vest.
And you just get it from Amazon, right?
Yeah, we'll link it. Not just any puffer vest, a cropped puffer vest, you guys.
You're in your cropped era.
I'm in my cropped puffer vest era. And sister asked me yesterday when I was having the Starbucks bacon Gouda sandwich, I had the puffer on. Mm-hmm. She texted me as soon as we left and she goes, "Where did you get that puffer vest? I meant to ask you. It's so cute." And I was like, "Oh, it's like a cheapie from Amazon." And so I got to send her the link.
You rock a puffer.
I love a puffer. Mm-hmm. I feel like it just is the perfect amount of coverage. You don't have to be cold, but you don't have to wear a full-on jacket.
You have been having hot spells.
Yes, I have. Okay. Moving on. I think I already mentioned this. My favorite app that I like for guided meditations, which is Brain Tap. Third thing is, can I get a drum roll? A tabletop fire.
This one is off the cuff. I can't lie. This one, I don't know if I can get down with. It's literally an open flame on your table, and it will like give you 2nd-degree burns if it kind of stinks.
None of that is true.
That is literally a big open flame on your kitchen table. Okay? I mean, it's nice. It's aesthetic. She loves taking her videos, but my dad is pissed because she was using, what was it? Rubbing alcohol and burning it into the air that we were breathing in this house. And he pulls up the filter and it's pitch black. You do have to get...
I got the good oil. I mean, the good...
I think it's great. I'm glad that you love it so much, but it is like surely an open flame on the table.
I feel like my family has not quite embraced my love for the tabletop fire pit. Here's what I thought. After I got it, I was so obsessed with it. I bought it like right before Thanksgiving, and I'm like, they're going to die at how amazing this is. Like, they're going to just be like...
in what world am I going to light that up? It doesn't produce any good smell.
It's the first thing now I do when I come downstairs in the morning.
I know that it is what you do. And I think that it is for someone... But I personally, like, I got my hand near it, and I was
it's warm.
It's hot.
I was going to get them for all of you guys for Christmas, but your very lackluster appreciation for the tabletop fire.
I don't want to, like, damper your passion for it.
I don't want to put out your literal fire.
And I know you're telling everyone to buy them, but...
I think everybody should have one.
I just want to warn you guys that it is an open flame.
On your table.
On your table.
It provides the most amazing
any young
ambiance.
Children, I wouldn't get it. Thomas handles it well.
Tom handles it well, but he's a pyro, so it's fine. All right, you guys, that's all we have for you today.
Woo-hoo!
Leave us a review. Ask any questions.
Please.
Listen, if you have ideas for episodes you want us to do, this 20-something chatting it up with her, I don't know,
crazy
53-year-old, almost 54-year-old mama. We would love to hear your thoughts, any episode ideas. Leave us a review.
Please let us know.
Let us know. Thank you so much. We love you. We hope you make your house and your literal house, your house that you live in, a house of joy.
A house of joy.
Yeah, we love you. All right.
Goodbye.
Bye.